What's going on, everybody? In today's video, I wanted to deep dive on Ratchet and Clank and do a head-to-head between the 6800 XT and the 3080 Ti. And I've done a lot of videos on this game, actually. As you can see here, 5 months ago, I tested a lot of different configurations and settings and that sort of thing. Even did a head-to-head between the 3080 Ti and 7900 XTX at 1440p with ray tracing, where the 3080 Ti was a little bit ahead. However, doing a lot of these same benchmarks now, it seems AMD has gained a little bit of ground here. I was also one of the early people that made a video essentially talking about the VRAM issues that I believed I was running into at 4K with the 3080 Ti and ray tracing enabled. Has anything changed? Well, that's what we're going to try to find out. And at the very end, I will also throw in the 7900 XTX and RTX 4090 for an interesting comparison and look at some hard numbers. Anyway, let's not waste any more time and dive straight into the benchmarks. We're going to begin with 1440p rasterization only, and I'll be showing the settings on both sides. We have the 6800 XT and 3080 Ti on the right. Now, this run that I did was in an area where it's actually quite a bit demanding, and as we can see here at 1440p rasterization, these two GPUs are pretty much the same. Now, unfortunately, I did not compare these two GPUs head-to-head in this similar scenario 5 months ago, so it's kind of hard for me to know what it was like. But I do remember the 3080 Ti being consistently ahead of the 6800 XT, ray tracing or rasterization, at least from what I remember. So to see these two GPUs be pretty much equivalent, it's actually kind of surprising. As a matter of fact, we have about an 8% higher 1% lows on the 6800 XT, which is kind of interesting. Now, to be fair, if we pay close attention to the GPU utilization on the 3080 Ti, it is dipping below 99% rather regularly, so that would be affecting the 1% lows as well. But this is some pretty good performance, and this is the same area that we will be testing for the next benchmark and the next benchmark, and we're going to compare the numbers and see what the advantages are and disadvantages are between the two. But this is pretty good, solid performance from the 6800 XT. A little bit surprising, actually. I thought the 3080 Ti would be ahead, because it usually is. Now we're going to be looking at 1440p with ray tracing. We've set the settings to very high, and ray tracing is also on very high on both GPUs, and this one actually surprised me. So we're going to take a look and see. Now the 3080 Ti does have an advantage, but the 6800 XT is putting a pretty good fight here, and we have a 23% advantage on the 1% lows for the 3080 Ti, and the averages are also 50% ahead for the 3080 Ti. But I want you to remember these results that we're getting here, the advantages of the 3080 Ti at 1440p, because at 4K it will be quite different between these two GPUs, even with ray tracing on.
Keep firing, or they will overwhelm us. Was that all of them?
Another thing that's sort of unrelated to this, but is at the same time, is that I do get comments sometimes, people asking me why the AMD GPUs utilize and allocate more VRAM. That is actually very normal behavior for the two. It doesn't matter what generation is. Well, at least for me, I've tested the 6000, RX 6000, RTX 3000, and 7000, and RTX 4000. The AMD GPUs will usually always utilize and allocate more VRAM. It's got nothing to do with how much VRAM the GPUs have. It's similar behavior with the 7900 XTX and 4090 as well, actually. Both of them have 24 gigs of VRAM. I think it's just the differences in the drivers. I mean, these are two different architectures and vendors of GPU with their own software and everything else. So that's just how it is. So the differences can be a few hundred megabytes to a couple gigabytes. Okay, now we're going to take a look at 1440p with ray tracing, native, but this time I'm going to compare the 3080 Ti with the 7900 XTX. Now, if you remember, on my old 5-month video, the 3080 Ti was ahead by a little bit. Unfortunately, I didn't have the 1% lows showing, so I can't really compare those. But the 7900 XTX has a lead by 23% on the 1% lows over the 3080 Ti. So that is kind of interesting. Now, as far as averages go, at the moment the 7900 XTX is a little bit higher. By the end of the benchmark, it'll pretty much be a draw. How do I determine a draw? Well, if it's less than 5% advantage, that's a draw to me. If it's over that, then I will list it. But by the end of this run, both of these GPUs are pretty much equivalent as far as averages go. But the 1% lows, which is a rather important metric, the 7900 XTX actually has an advantage here, and a very noticeable advantage at that. So this area is a little bit demanding based off my experience and what I've compared. It is rather CPU intensive. And also important to remember is that the 3080 Ti seems to be dropping a little bit below 99% as well on the GPU utilization part. So I'm not sure if that's the NVIDIA driver overhead at play here affecting the 1% lows. It probably is, but I can't be 100% sure, and I'm not going to assume because I hate doing that and spreading misinformation. That's something I will never do willingly anyway. And now it's time to jump on 4K. So this will be 4K rasterization between the 6800 XT and 3080 Ti. No upscaling here. And the results are actually pretty much expected. We had an 8% advantage for the 6800 XT on the 1% lows at 1440p, and here we have 7%, so that kind of makes sense. And the 3080 Ti has a 10% advantage on the averages, which kind of makes sense because the RX 6000 GPUs kind of fell a bit behind at 4K. I believe it was because of the 256-bit bus some of the times. The 3080 Ti has a very fast memory bus. And also faster RAM, so that could be the reason why. Also, the RTX 3000 was a pretty good 4K GPU, whereas RX 6000s usually had a sort of an advantage or a higher advantage at 1440p, based on my experience and from what I've seen anyway. But here, yeah, I mean, these two GPUs are very comparable, I would say. It is important also to remember that I do see the 3080 Ti drop below 99% GPU utilization more than I see the 6800 XT. As a matter of fact, 6800 XT is pretty much almost locked at 99 most of the time, but interesting results to say the least. And again, I wanted to choose this area because there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of effects, throwing bombs and all that stuff. That kind of puts a bit of a strain on the CPU as well. But yeah, this is quite interesting. Now, the most interesting aspect about this is perhaps when we toggle ray tracing on, which we'll be looking at in a second. Okay, so this is our 4K ray tracing, very high, with DLSS and FSR set to balance. Okay, and this is where I believe and I'm pretty sure that we're running into VRAM issues with the RTX 3080 Ti, but actually even the 6800 XT gets close to running out of VRAM here as well. Now, VRAM is one of those things that is not as easy to pinpoint, and I see a lot of people just throw the word VRAM out, or it's running out of VRAM, where it could be like shaders, caching issues, or just, you know, their own builds, or just the game. I mean, we've had a lot of bad games, but I hate when people just say VRAM this, VRAM that, without, I like to go the extra mile and actually look at things, and if it is, that's what it is, then I will point it out. And now, if you look at the RAM use on the 3080 Ti, it's gone up quite considerably, and I do believe that right now we're not running out of VRAM, but we're very borderline to running out of VRAM. Now let's go back to the 1440p with the 6800 XT against the 3080 Ti with ray tracing, and you can see the 3080 Ti had a 50% advantage on the averages and 23% advantage on the 1% lows. And the 6800 XT has actually closed the gap by quite a bit at 4K. I do believe this could be because of the VRAM. Because it's one of those things that doesn't really make much sense, you know? You would expect them to at the very least be equivalent, especially with ray tracing on. And we will actually see this on the next part of this benchmark, where I will pit the 3080 Ti against the 7900 XTX and 4090. What this will allow us to see is we'll be able to see exactly how much is allocated and utilized on the 4090, because it has 24 gigs of VRAM versus the 3080 Ti's 12. So I do believe that here we're running into some VRAM issues. As you can see, the GPU power consumption is now dropping, but the GPU utilization is not. That is usually a sign of VRAM limitations and also a very bad frame time consistency, okay? So let's take a look at this here. The RTX 4090 has a 200% advantage on the averages over the 3080 Ti, 7900 XTX, 37%, and then 1% lows. Actually, the 7900 XTX is ahead. 4090 has 38% advantage, 1% lows over the 3080 Ti. But it's also very important to remember that the 4090 is CPU bound here consistently. So it can definitely do more than what we're able to see, because it's being system limited or engine limited, whatever it might be. It's not being fully utilized. That's kind of the point. Now, if we look at the 4090, we're allocating almost 14 gigs of VRAM, and we're utilizing 12 gigs of VRAM. So that's what I'm saying. With the 3080 Ti, you're kind of at that border. Once you toggle ray tracing on, you're at that border. So you could be okay if you just turned on reflections but not ambient occlusion, or vice versa, or if you were to lower the texture quality from very high to high. There is ways to kind of go around it, but I do believe we're kind of borderline right now. You can see that on the frame times. They're not really, really bad, but they're not great, but they're not really, really bad. And you can see that on the 4090. We are below 12 gigabytes of actual use, right? And then you can also see on the 7900 XTX, we're above 16 gigs of VRAM on allocation, but below it on the use. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. I wanted to take a look at this, and I'm actually surprised. I do think AMD has gained some ground in this game based off what I remember anyway. Anyway though, guys, that'll be it for this video. Let's discuss it down below, and please don't fight with one another. I hate when I see people fight over GPU brands. It's just so pathetic. Stop it. You can discuss things as enthusiasts. That's just kind of what I want to see in this channel, although I can't stop people from fighting, I guess. But anyway, I hope you guys liked it. It took me a little bit of time to put this together. I wanted to try something different and kind of evolve what I do to some degree. So if you did like it, give it a like, and if you want to subscribe for more content, please feel free to do so. I'd highly appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and have a good one. Bye-bye.